Julian Montgomery stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker below. He had just purchased his 15th restaurant, the Golden Harvest, a struggling establishment in the heart of downtown. The financial reports painted one picture, but Julian had learned long ago that numbers never told the complete story. Something felt wrong, and he needed to discover what. His assistant, Rebecca, entered with a folder. Mr. Montgomery, the Quarterly. Reports for the Golden Harvest are ready. Profits are down 30%, and customer complaints have tripled in 6 months. Julian turned from the window. I want to see it for myself, not as the owner, but as someone on the inside. Rebecca raised her eyebrows. You mean go undercover? Exactly. Arrange everything. New identity, work clothes, the whole setup. I start. Monday. 3 days later, Julian walked through the back entrance of the Golden Harvest, wearing faded jeans and a plain white shirt. His luxury watch had been replaced with a simple timepiece, and his expensive cologne swapped for drugstore aftershave. He felt strangely liberated. The woman with the bright smile. The employee locker room smelled of cleaning supplies and burnt coffee. Julian was fumbling with his apron when a voice startled him. First day? He turned to see a woman with kind hazel. Eyes and auburn hair pulled into a ponytail. Her name tag read, Grace Winters, and despite the tired lines around her eyes, her smile was genuine and warm. That obvious? Julian replied, finally getting the apron tied correctly. Only because you just tied it backwards. Grace laughed softly. Here, let me help. She stepped closer and quickly fixed the apron with practiced movements. Julian caught the faint scent of vanilla and noticed the small burn scar on her wrist, likely from years of kitchen work. Thank you. I'm James Porter. Welcome to the Golden Harvest, James. Try not to look too terrified. It's not as bad as it seems. She paused, then added with a mischievous grin. Actually, it's worse, but we survive. The storm named Victor. The morning rush started smoothly enough. Grace showed Julian how to balance trays, organize orders, and navigate the kitchen chaos. She had an easy way of teaching, turning every mistake into a learning moment rather than a crisis. Hold the tray from underneath, not the edge, she instructed after Julian nearly dropped a stack of plates. Think of it like cradling a baby, a very fragile, breakable baby made of ceramic. Julian laughed, despite his nervousness. That's oddly specific. I've had practice. Last month we went through 3 new waiters. None lasted more than 2 weeks. Before Julian could ask why, a booming voice cut through the dining room. Grace, what do you think you're doing? A heavy-set man with thinning hair and a perpetual scowl stormed toward them. His name tag identified him as Victor Kane, manager. Everything about his body language screamed aggression and control. I'm training the new employee, Victor, just like you asked. I asked you to train him, not chat with him like this is a social club. Victor's face reddened. We have customers waiting? Or did you forget how to do your actual job? Grace's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. Table 7 just got their order. Table 3 is waiting for dessert menus. Table 9 needs their check. Everything is under control. Don't talk back to me, Winters. You might think you're special because customers like you, but you're replaceable. Remember that. Julian felt anger surge through him. He wanted to step forward, to tell Victor exactly who he was and fire him on the spot. But he forced himself to stay silent. He needed to see more, understand the full picture before acting. Watching and learning throughout the day, Julian observed everything. The kitchen staff moved with fear rather than efficiency. The other waiters kept their heads down, avoiding Victor's attention. Meanwhile, Grace somehow managed to keep the entire dining room running smoothly while maintaining her composure and kindness toward customers. During a brief afternoon lull, Julian found Grace refilling salt shakers in the corner. How long have you worked here? He asked, sitting across from her. 3 years. Long enough to memorize every crack in these tables. And Victor has been manager the whole time? Grace's hands paused. 2 years. Before him, this place actually felt like a family. Now it feels like a battlefield where we're all just trying to survive until closing time. Why do you stay? She looked up, and Julian saw something flicker in her eyes. Pride, maybe, or determination. Because I need this job. Because rent doesn't pay itself. Because despite everything, I still believe good food and good service matter. And because someday I want to run my own place. Every awful shift with Victor teaches me exactly what kind of boss I'll never be. Julian felt something shift in his chest. This woman wasn't just surviving. She was learning, growing, preparing for her own future despite the obstacles. The breaking point. The evening shift brought a rush of customers. Julian was carrying a tray of drinks when he heard shouting from the kitchen. "This is unacceptable!" Victor's voice echoed through the service window. "Who made this disaster?" Julian peered through and saw Victor holding a plate, waving it at a young cook who looked ready to cry. "I followed the recipe exactly," the cook stammered. "Then you're too stupid to read. This is garbage. Make it again, and if it's not perfect, you're done here. Understand?" The cook nodded, hands shaking as she took the plate back. Julian set down his tray and pulled out the small notebook he'd been carrying. He'd been documenting everything: Victor's verbal abuse, the unsafe kitchen practices, the corners being cut on food quality, the way staff were treated like disposable tools rather than human beings. Grace appeared beside him. "You okay? You look angry." "I'm fine. Just not used to seeing people treated like that." "Welcome to the Golden Harvest," Grace said quietly. "This is every day." As the shift ended, Julian walked to his car with a clear picture forming in his mind. The Golden Harvest wasn't failing because of market conditions or competition. It was failing because Victor Kane had created a toxic environment that drove away good employees and left customers with mediocre service. But he'd also discovered something unexpected. Grace Winters was the heart of this restaurant. Despite everything, she kept it beating. And Julian Montgomery was about to make sure her dedication was finally recognized. He sat in his car looking at his notes. Tomorrow he would continue observing. But soon, very soon, changes would come to the Golden Harvest. Big changes, and Grace Winters would be at the center of them all. The morning sun filtered through the restaurant windows as Julian arrived for his second week. He had spent the weekend reviewing security footage and employee files, but nothing compared to the reality of working alongside the staff. Today felt different somehow, charged with possibility. Grace was already setting up the dining room, moving with practiced efficiency. She looked up when Julian entered and offered a tired smile. "Morning, James. Ready for another adventure in restaurant?" "Survival?" "Always," Julian replied, grabbing his apron. "What's on the agenda today?" "Well, if we're lucky, Victor will be in meetings most of the morning. That means we might actually enjoy our work for a few hours." Her words proved prophetic. Victor left early for a supplier meeting, and the atmosphere in the Golden Harvest transformed instantly. The kitchen staff started humming along to music. The waiters relaxed their shoulders. Even the customers seemed to sense the lighter mood. A glimpse. Behind the curtain. During the lunch rush, Julian struggled with a particularly difficult customer who kept changing her order. Grace swooped in effortlessly, her smile never wavering, "Course we can adjust that for you. Let me make sure the kitchen gets it exactly right." She turned to Julian and whispered, "Follow me. Time for a real lesson." In the kitchen, Grace spoke directly to the head chef, Carlos, an older man with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands. "Carlos, table 12, needs the salmon, but hold the capers. Add extra lemon, and she wants the vegetables steamed, not grilled." Carlos nodded. "Grace, you remember what people ordered 3 weeks ago. How do you do that?" "I pay attention," she said simply. "People come to restaurants for more than food. They want to feel heard, seen, remembered. Julian watched her interact with the kitchen staff. They respected her, trusted her judgment. She wasn't just a waitress. She was the bridge between the dining room and kitchen, the person who made everything work smoothly. Back in the dining room, Julian helped Grace deliver orders. "You're really good at this. Have you ever thought about management?" Grace laughed, but there was bitterness in it. "Victor would never promote me. He sees me as a threat. Anyone who makes him look bad by being competent becomes his enemy." "That's terrible business practice. Tell me about it." Grace paused, studying Julian with those perceptive hazel eyes. "You know, James, you don't talk like most waiters. You have this way of analyzing everything, like you're studying the place rather than just working here." Julian's heart skipped. Had he been too obvious? "I just find people interesting. Understanding how places work helps me do better." "Well, your curiosity is refreshing. Most people here just want to clock in and clock out without Victor noticing them." Secrets over coffee. That afternoon, during their break, Grace invited Julian to the small patio behind the restaurant. She pulled out a worn notebook filled with recipes and sketches. "Can I show you something? I don't usually share this, but you seem different, trustworthy." Julian nodded, genuinely curious. Grace opened the notebook to reveal detailed plans for a restaurant. Hand-drawn floor plans, menu ideas, even concepts for plate presentations. Every page showed creativity, passion, and deep knowledge of the food industry. "This is incredible," Julian said, and he meant it. "These recipes, the layout, the whole concept, this is professional-level work." Grace's cheeks flushed. "It's just a dream, something I work on when I can't sleep or when shifts get really bad. Helps me remember why I'm doing this, what I'm working toward." "Why haven't you pursued this? Applied for loans? Looked for investors?" "Banks don't give loans to waitresses with no collateral. Investors want proven track records. And culinary school costs more than I make in 2 years." She closed the notebook carefully. "So I collect recipes, study techniques online, and wait for a miracle." Julian wanted to tell her right then that he could make this dream happen with a single phone call, that she didn't have to wait or struggle. But something held him back. He needed her to trust him as James first, to build a real connection before revealing his true identity. "Miracles happen," he said softly. "Sometimes when you least expect them." Victor's return. The peaceful atmosphere shattered when Victor returned. In the late afternoon, slamming through the back door with his usual grace of an angry bull. "Why is table 8 still waiting for their appetizers?" he bellowed, before even checking the actual status. Grace checked her notepad. "Table 8 got their appetizers 12 minutes ago, Victor. They're currently enjoying them." "Don't contradict me, Winters." "I'm not contradicting you. I'm stating facts. You can go look if you want." Victor's face turned an alarming shade of purple. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Always have an answer, always making me look bad." "I'm just doing my job. Your job is to do what I say when I say it. Nothing more." Julian stepped forward without thinking. "She's right, sir. Table 8 is fine. Maybe we should focus on the actual problems." The dining room went silent. Every employee froze, waiting to see what would happen when someone dared to support Grace against Victor. Victor turned his glare on Julian. "You've been here, what, a week? And you think you can tell me how to run my restaurant?" "I'm not telling you anything, just pointing out facts." "Facts?" Victor stepped closer, invading Julian's personal space. "Here's a fact. You're both on thin ice. One more smart comment, one more mistake, and you're both gone. This isn't a democracy. I don't care if customers like you, Grace. I don't care. If you think you're special, James, you're both replaceable." He stormed off to his office, leaving a wake of tension behind him. Grace touched Julian's arm gently. "Thanks for standing up for me, but be careful. Victor holds grudges. He'll look for any excuse to fire you now." Let him try, Julian said, his voice harder than intended. Some things are worth standing up for. Night conversations. After the shift ended, Julian found Grace sitting in her car in the parking lot, engine off, just staring at the steering wheel. He knocked on the window. She jumped, then rolled it down. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired. Some days are harder than others." "Want to grab dinner?" "Nothing fancy, just food that someone else cooked." "My treat." Grace hesitated, then smiled. "Only if you promise not to judge my eating habits. When I'm stressed, I eat like a starving raccoon." They ended up at a small diner 3 blocks away, sitting in a corner booth with red vinyl seats. Grace ordered pancakes with extra syrup, and Julian got a burger. "So, James Porter," Grace said, pouring syrup in a perfect spiral, "tell me something real about yourself. Not work stuff. Something that matters." Julian thought carefully. He wanted to be honest without revealing too much. "I grew up with a lot of expectations. People always told me who I should be, what I should do. Sometimes I wonder if I'm living my life or the life everyone else planned for me." Grace nodded slowly. "That's deeper than I expected. Most guys would have said their favorite sports team or something." "I'm not most guys." "I'm starting to realize that." She took a bite of pancakes. "Want to know something real about me? I'm scared. Every single day, I'm terrified that I'll wake up in 10 years still waiting tables, still watching other people, live their dreams while mine sit in a notebook gathering dust. That won't happen. How can you be so sure?" Julian looked directly into her eyes. "Because I see how hard you work, how much you care, how good you are at what you do. People like you don't stay stuck. The world has a way of recognizing real talent eventually." Grace's eyes glistened. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I see how you treat everyone with respect, from the dishwashers to the difficult customers. I see how you turn chaos into calm. I see someone who deserves so much more than she's getting." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between them. "Can I ask you something?" Grace said finally. "Why do you really work at the Golden Harvest? You're smart, articulate, and you handle pressure better than people who've been in service for years. You could work anywhere, so why there? Why stay when Victor makes everything miserable?" Julian's breath caught. He couldn't tell her the full truth, but he could offer something real. "Because I needed to understand something. About people, about work, about what really matters. And because the moment I walked in and met you, I knew there was something important happening there. Something worth seeing through." Grace smiled, genuinely touched. "That's either really sweet or really weird. I haven't decided which." "Can it be both?" "I suppose it can." They finished their meal, talking about everything from childhood memories to favorite books. Julian learned that Grace's grandmother had raised her, teaching her to cook and to value hard work. Grace learned that James had once wanted to be an artist before practical concerns took over. Walking Grace back to her car, Julian felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a genuine connection based on who he was, not what he owned. "Thank you for tonight," Grace said. "I needed this more than you know." "Anytime." "Same time next week?" "It's a date. Well, not a date. A friend date. A meal between colleagues who tolerate each other." Julian laughed. "That's the most complicated way to say yes I've ever heard." "I contain multitudes," Grace grinned, sliding into her car. As Julian drove home that night, he knew everything was about to change. He had seen enough, learned enough. It was time to reveal the truth and transform the Golden Harvest into what it should have been all along. But first, he needed to figure out how to tell Grace who he really was without losing the connection they had built. Because somewhere between the trays of food and Victor's insults, Julian Montgomery had developed real feelings for Grace Winters, and that complicated everything in the best possible way. Monday morning arrived with dark clouds hanging over the city, matching the tension inside the golden harvest. Julian had spent the weekend preparing for what would happen today. His lawyer had drawn up the necessary documents, and his team was ready to implement immediate changes. But first, he needed to witness one more thing. Victor arrived in a foul mood, slamming doors and snapping at everyone within earshot. Grace was setting up the dining room when he cornered her near the kitchen entrance. "I've been reviewing the schedule, Winters. You're working every weekend for the next month. No exceptions." Grace looked up, exhaustion evident in her eyes. "Victor, I requested those Saturdays off months ago. My grandmother's birthday is coming up, and I haven't missed it in 10 years. Not my problem. We're short-staffed because people keep quitting. Wonder why that is." His tone dripped with sarcasm. "Maybe. If you spent less time chatting with customers and more time actually working, we wouldn't have this issue. I do my job better than anyone here, and you know it." Victor stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You think you're irreplaceable? I can have a new waitress in here by tomorrow who'll do exactly what I say without the attitude. Keep pushing me, Grace, and see what happens." Julian had been listening from around the corner, his hands clenched into fists. This was it. He had seen enough cruelty, enough abuse of power, enough talented people being crushed under Victor's ego. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text message. "Now." Within minutes, his assistant Rebecca walked through the front door, followed by the restaurant's regional director and the head of human resources. All three carried briefcases and wore professional expressions. Victor's face went pale when he saw them. "What's going on? Nobody told me about a corporate visit." "Mr. Kane," the regional director said coldly, "we need to speak with you immediately, in private." As they ushered a confused and angry Victor into the back office, Julian approached Grace, who stood frozen in confusion. "What just happened?" she asked. "The beginning of something better. Come with me. There's something I need to show you." The truth revealed Julian led Grace to a small, private dining room normally reserved for special events. He gestured for her to sit, then took a deep breath. "Grace, I haven't been completely honest with you. My name isn't James Porter." Her face showed confusion, mixed with hurt. "What do you mean?" "My real name is Julian Montgomery. I own the Golden Harvest. I own 12 other restaurants across the state. I came here undercover to understand why this place was failing, to see the truth. Behind the numbers and reports." Grace stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You've been lying to me this whole time, pretending to be someone you're not, watching us like we're some kind of experiment." "It wasn't like that. I needed to see how things really worked, without people performing for the boss. But Grace, everything else was real. Our conversations, our friendship, everything I said about you and your talent, that was all genuine." "How can I believe anything you say now?" Her voice cracked with emotion. "I told you things, showed you my dreams, trusted you, and you were just gathering information?" "I was gathering information about Victor, about the management problems, but I wasn't lying about you. You're the most talented person I've ever met in this industry. Your passion, your skill, your ability to make everyone around you better, that's all real, and I saw it clearly." Grace turned away, arms wrapped around herself. "I feel like such a fool." "Don't. You did nothing wrong. I'm the one who deceived you, and I'm sorry. But Grace, please look at me." She turned slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. Julian continued, his voice earnest. "These past weeks working beside you have been the most real, most meaningful time I've had in years. Yes, I came here as an owner investigating his business, but I stayed because of you. Because watching you work, seeing your dreams, understanding who you really are, it changed something in me." "Changed what?" "It reminded me why I got into this business in the first place, not for profit margins or expansion plans, but because Restaurants should be places where people feel valued, where talent is recognized, where dreams can actually come true. Victor's departure. The office door opened and Victor emerged, his face red with fury. He was carrying a box with his personal belongings, escorted by security guards Julian had called in. "This is illegal," Victor shouted. "You can't just fire me without cause." The regional director followed him out, her voice calm and professional. "Mr. Kane, we have documented evidence of workplace harassment, verbal abuse, and creating a hostile work environment. Your termination is effective immediately, and you're lucky we're not pursuing legal action." Victor's eyes landed on Julian, and understanding dawned. You're behind this. Who are you?" "Julian Montgomery, the owner, and you're done here." As security escorted Victor out, he shouted threats and accusations, but nobody paid attention. The other employees had gathered, watching in stunned silence as their tormentor was finally removed. When the door closed behind Victor, the restaurant erupted. Staff members hugged each other, some crying with relief. Carlos, the head chef, actually laughed out loud for the first time in months. Julian turned to address everyone. "I know this is confusing. Some of you know me as James Porter. My real name is Julian Montgomery, and I own the Golden Harvest. I came here undercover because I needed to understand what was really happening, and what I found was unacceptable." He paused, looking at each person. Victor Kane created a toxic environment that drove away good employees and made every day miserable. That ends today. But more than that, I discovered something else. This restaurant has incredible potential because of all of you. Your dedication, your talent, your ability to provide excellent service despite terrible management, that's what kept this place alive. Grace's decision. After addressing the staff, Julian found Grace sitting alone at a corner table, her grandmother's recipe notebook open in front of her. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. "I don't know what to say to you right now. Part of me is angry, part of me is relieved about Victor, and part of me is just confused." Julian sat across from her. "I understand. I violated your trust, and I'm truly sorry. But Grace, I meant everything I said about your talent and your dreams, and I want to help make them real." "What do you mean?" He pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. "I want you to manage the Golden Harvest. Real management. Not Victor's version. You'll have full authority over hiring, menu development, and operations. Salary triple what you're making now, plus profit sharing." Grace stared at the folder without opening it. "Why me?" "Because in 2 weeks I watched you do what most people can't do in years. You kept this place running through pure skill and determination. You understand food, service, and most importantly, people. You're exactly who this restaurant needs." "I don't have management experience. You've been managing this place all along. Victor just took credit for your work." Julian leaned forward. "But that's not all. I read your notebook. Saw your restaurant. Concept. It's brilliant, Grace. Give me 6 months as manager here, prove what I already know you can do, and I'll help you open your own place. Full investment, your vision, your name on the door." Grace's hands trembled as she finally opened the folder. Inside were contracts, financial projections, and architectural sketches based on her own drawings. "You did all this over the weekend?" "I have a good team, but the vision is yours. I'm just offering resources to make it happen." Tears spilled down Grace's cheeks. "This is everything I've dreamed about. But Julian, how can I trust this? How do I know you're not just feeling guilty and making promises you won't keep?" Julian reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "Because I'm not doing this out of guilt. I'm doing it because you deserve this opportunity. Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. And because these past weeks, getting to know you, seeing your passion and dedication, it reminded me what really matters in life, which is people, real connections, building something meaningful, not just profitable." He paused. "Grace, I came here to fix a failing restaurant. But you fixed something in me. You reminded me why I fell in love with this industry, why creating spaces where people feel valued and dreams can flourish matters more than any profit margin. A new beginning, Grace wiped her eyes and looked at the papers again, then at Julian. If I do this, if I take this chance, I need to know one thing. Were any of our conversations real? The diner, the coffee breaks, the things we shared? Every word, Julian said firmly. I may have lied about my name, but I never lied about my feelings or my respect for you. James Porter was just a name. The person you got to know, that was really me. Maybe more real than I've been with anyone in years. Grace nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. First, everyone who stayed through Victor's abuse gets a raise and a bonus. They earned it. Second, we bring back the 3 people Victor fired unjustly last month. Third, Carlos becomes head chef officially, with the salary and respect that position deserves. Julian smiled. Done, done, and done. Anything else? Yes. You have to promise me something. No more lies. If we're going to work together, if I'm going to trust you with my dreams, I need complete honesty from now on. You have my word. Grace stood up and extended her hand. Then you have a deal, Mr. Montgomery. Julian shook her hand, feeling the warmth and strength in her grip. It's Julian, and thank you for giving me this chance. Thank you for giving me mine. 3 months later, the golden harvest had transformed. The dining room had been refreshed with warm colors and comfortable seating. The menu featured several of Grace's grandmother's recipes alongside innovative new dishes. Most importantly, the atmosphere had completely changed. Laughter echoed from the kitchen where Carlos led a team that actually enjoyed their work. The staff moved with confidence and pride. Customer reviews had gone from mediocre to outstanding, and reservations were booked solid 2 weeks in advance. Grace stood in the dining room during the evening rush, overseeing everything with the natural authority of someone born for leadership. She caught Julian's eye across the room and smiled. He smiled back, remembering the day he'd first walked in as a fake waiter and heard her say those 3 simple words that had frozen him in place. You look tired. Such a small observation. But it had opened his eyes to someone truly special. After closing, Julian found Grace reviewing the next day's reservations in the office that used to be Victor's domain. Big day tomorrow, he said, leaning against the doorframe. The food critics from the Tribune are coming. I know. Carlos has been perfecting the menu all week. We're ready. I have no doubt. Julian paused. Grace, I want to show you something. He pulled out blueprints and spread them across the desk. They showed a beautiful small restaurant with an open kitchen, cozy dining spaces, and a layout exactly matching the sketches from Grace's notebook. The property on 5th Street, the one. You showed me that night at the diner. I bought it. Construction starts next month. This is your restaurant, Grace, your dream. Grace's hands flew to her mouth, tears immediately forming. Julian, I haven't even finished 6 months yet. We agreed. You've proven yourself in 3. Besides, the Golden Harvest needs you to stay on as consultant, but your own place needs you to bring it to life. You can do both. She walked around the desk and, without warning, hugged him tightly. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I felt invisible. For believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. Julian held her carefully, breathing in the familiar vanilla scent. You were never invisible, Grace. You were the only person I could see. She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. Can I ask you something? That first day when I said you looked tired, you froze. Why? Julian smiled at the memory. Because nobody had really looked at me in years. Not at Julian. Montgomery, the businessman, or the owner, or the millionaire. You saw a tired person who needed kindness, and you offered it without expecting anything in return. In that moment, I knew I'd found something rare. And what was that? Someone genuine in a world full of pretense, someone who cared about people, more than profit, someone who reminded me who I wanted to be. Grace's eyes searched his face. And who is that? Someone worthy of knowing you. The office was quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerators in the kitchen. Outside, the city lights sparkled like possibilities waiting to unfold. You know, Grace said softly, when you first told me the truth, I was so angry. But looking back, I understand why you did it. And I'm grateful. Because if Julian Montgomery had walked in as the owner, I would have been too intimidated to be myself. I never would have shown you my notebook or shared my dreams. And I never would have discovered the most talented restaurateur I've ever met. Is that what I am now? A restaurateur? That's what you've always been. You just needed someone to give you the chance to prove it. Grace looked at the blueprints again, running her fingers over the lines that represented her future. What should I call it? I've thought of 100 names, but none feel quite right. What does your heart tell you? She was quiet for a long moment, then smiled. The harvest table, because it's about bringing people together, sharing abundance, and remembering where we came from while celebrating where we're going. Perfect, Julian said. Just like you. As they stood together looking at the plans for Grace's restaurant, both of them felt the weight of the journey that had brought them here. From that first encounter when Julian was just a struggling fake waiter, to Victor's removal, to this moment where dreams were becoming reality. The golden harvest had been saved not by corporate strategies or financial investment alone, but by recognizing and nurturing the talent that had been there all along. And in the process, Julian Montgomery had discovered something more valuable than any business success. He had found someone who saw him for who he truly was, who challenged him to be better, and who reminded him that the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars but in genuine human connections and the dreams we help each other achieve. 3 simple words had started everything. You look tired. And those words had led to transformation, redemption, and the beginning of something neither of them had expected, but both desperately needed. A partnership built on respect, honesty, and the shared belief that everyone deserves a chance to shine. 6 months later, the harvest table opened its doors to a line of customers that stretched around the block. Grace stood at the entrance in a chef's coat with her name embroidered on it, greeting guests with that same warm smile that had first caught Julian's attention. And Julian Montgomery stood beside her, no longer undercover, no longer pretending, just grateful for the day he decided to become a waiter and met a woman who changed everything. The end was really just the beginning.